Well, shalom, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I know it's been a little while. I have been under the weather. I caught the flu and I couldn't speak for about a week. I had to talk in a whisper, which was kind of annoying. So I think my voice is at least up to par that people can understand me. So I thought I would do another video. This time around, I thought I would answer a question that was in the comments section to the previous video that I put up on where do the 7 Noahide laws appear in the TaNaK. I thought it was a very interesting question, a very relevant question. I think a lot of you have the same question, and I thought I would answer it in this video, and along the way bring up another couple of things about the 7 Noahide laws that people need to know. Okay, so the question is, as followers of Yeshua, is it safe to say that you start with 7 Noahide laws and gradually evolve and pick up more commandments as you go? So that was the gist of the question. And I guess the key thing in that question is as followers of Yeshua. As followers of Yeshua. So normally somebody who is a Noahide, is a righteous Gentile, and they're picking up more commandments, they have an intention to pick up more commandments, that is usually in 100%, 99.9, 100% of the time, most of the time, all the time, because they have an intention to convert. Excuse me. So that doesn't mean that you can be a Noahide and that you have to be on your way to conversion. Certainly, being a righteous Gentile, being a B'nai Noach, a son of Noah, you can be in that state for the entirety of your life, just as long as you abide by these 7 principal laws, these 7 universal moral laws. And so somebody who was going on to convert, of course, the answer is yes, they would be definitely a stepping stone for more observances that the person would take on if they entered the Orthodox Jewish world. Now, I want to make that clear. It has to be the Orthodox Jewish world and the Orthodox Jewish world only. There is no other valid stream of Judaism apart from Orthodox Judaism that is valid, that is genuine. You have Reform, you have various groups and organizations. Now you have modern Orthodox, which sounds pretty legitimate. All of these other offshoots are not the correct way a person should go, and certainly a messianic believer, somebody who believes in Yeshua, follows Yeshua's teachings, they shouldn't look to try and convert and keep their faith in Messiah, Yeshua, a secret. Neither should they try to a conversion that is being offered online or some backyard conversion where the members of the Beit Din, even their Jewishness, is questionable, and so there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different organizations offering different things, like doing a conversion online and never really kind of meeting or being interviewed by anybody is just ridiculous. And yet, if you pay an amount of money, you get a little certificate, a little piece of paper with your name on it, which isn't the worth the paper that it's written on, nor is the ink that it's written with. So it's just an absolute waste of time and a waste of money, and it's only going to get you into trouble. And like I said, anybody who is trying to convert by subterfuge, by some sort of cloak and dagger means, that's only going to get you into huge amounts of trouble. Even if your intention isn't to proselytize, but to simply be quiet, keep your mouth zipped, and learn with no ulterior motive down the track to do any damage. Be that as it may, on the rare occasion that that's genuinely the case, you're still going to be seen as a Trojan horse of sorts, And it's a desecration of the name of Hashem. It's a Kilul Hashem, because you're just giving the Orthodox Jewish world more ammunition and more evidence to show that people who have faith in Messiah are up to no good. And certainly by infiltrating the Orthodox Jewish world in the hopes of by converting them, doing things in an underhanded way is certainly not the way forward. So we have to be very careful, and I want to also make it clear that it's absolutely crucial that nobody be found proselytizing to Orthodox Jews or Jews of any group or associating with them in that way with that intention. Because to do so is to court an act of spiritual murder, which is completely forbidden. Spiritually murdering somebody is worse than physically murdering them. Now, the reason why I say that is because the Messianic world is not very Torah observant, like an Orthodox Jewish believer, Orthodox Jewish person is, because they just don't have the runs on the board. They don't have the wherewithal. They struggle with just keeping simple things. For example, eating kosher. Many of them have the perception that eating kosher is simply refraining from eating pork and shellfish, and maybe draining meat that they've bought at a secular butcher's at a supermarket or something of its blood, and washing the meat, and hey presto, it's kosher, when that's actually not the case. Kosher food, even if the animal is kosher, isn't kosher unless the animal has been slaughtered in the correct way. And most animals are slaughtered through electrocution, and they're not slaughtered with a knife that's extremely sharp. There's a particular vein in the neck that needs to be massaged, and there's a particular blessing that's said in an intent that the person has when they say the blessing. And the animal is simply drifts off into a relaxed state, and then the knife, it being very sharp, causes the animal to bleed out, and it's a very humane way of slaughtering an animal. So if an animal isn't slaughtered in that way, then it's not kosher. Furthermore, if an animal isn't brought up on a farm with farmers that are Torah observant, and from the outset of its actual birth and how it comes into the world and how it's reared on the farm, ready to be slaughtered from the day it arrives on planet Earth to the time it is served up on the plate of an Orthodox Jew, it's handled in a way that's kosher, and that's what makes the animal kosher. So you can't just grab meat from anywhere unless it's fish. Fish is okay, but if it's something like lamb or beef or anything like that, it's not kosher unless it's purchased and has a kosher seal on it. And I would be aiming for glatt kosher at that, and that's not cheap. It's very expensive. It's very expensive to eat kosher. So, and those of you that are going to go, okay, now I'm going to keep buying meat and eating meat, and thinking that you want to be keeping all the Torah like an Orthodox Jew does with your faith in Yeshua, well, then just know that the animal has been electrocuted somewhere, and it's fallen down in its own blood, feces, and urine, and it's laid there for quite some time until somebody's come along and finally hosed all that off of it before it's hooked up, and then it's drawn and quartered, and then it's sent off to butchers. And this is, in some cases, why the meat in a secular butcher or a secular supermarket has a different taste, is because the animal has literally been fermenting and marinating in its own urine, feces, and blood before it gets to the butchers. I know that sounds very, very, very terrible to hear, but that's the truth. So the basic observance of a Messianic is questionable, to say the least. And so what happens is, if they were to convince somebody, Has Shalom, of the authenticity of Yeshua as the Messiah, and drew them out of an Orthodox Jewish community and then pulled them into a Messianic community, their Torah observance is immediately going to take a huge plummet. It's going to be hugely downgraded. And so eventually that person will be not as observant and not as strict as they were, and then become lax, and then be exposed and be in proximity of other people who really have absolutely no clue or understanding of how to observe the Torah at all. And so you're only going to bring the person to be smashed like a shipwreck on rocks. Because the problem is that though the majority of the Messianic world, and you could argue the Christian world, have the right guy, supposedly, they don't have, largely still don't understand what his mission was, and what he actually came to do, what he did and what he's going to do in the future. And they really struggle with just his real identity. And so if you haven't got his identity, his mission spot on, then whether you picked out the right guy in a crowd or not, you've still essentially got the wrong guy. And though the Orthodox Jewish world reject him, and they've always had a tradition and history of rejecting Yeshua, and well that they have, because certainly the way he's been portrayed over the majority of the existence of the Christian world, it has been wrong, has been completely wrong. And Orthodox Jews, to a degree, would agree with that, citing that he was originally a Jew. In fact, according to many Orthodox Jews' perceptions of him based on the Talmud, he actually studied under an Orthodox rabbi, as the story goes, if you believe some of the Talmudic stories about the Messiah. Excuse me. And so Judaism will never accept Yeshua as the Messiah, at least not while Christianity exists. People have to understand that, and they have to also understand that there is a divine decree that has been put over the eyes, so to speak, of the Orthodox Jew about Yeshua's candidacy as the Messiah. And this is a blindness by divine decree for a set amount of time. So who are we to try and accelerate the expiration of that due date, whenever it is? We just simply be as upright as we can, and live as righteously as we can, and things will happen in their due course. But if we go out our way to try and manipulate and cause mechanisms to move before their appointed time, without first seeking righteousness and seeking the kingdom, seeking to be a person who is God-fearing, then we cause all sorts of dramas, because we're trying to manually bring things into circulation before the Kadosh Baruch Hu has the intention of doing it, and it'll only bring us to destruction. So, getting back to the question, you're probably thinking, well, what was the answer to that question? There was so much in what I've just said. The answer is, if it's absolutely got nothing to do with Yeshua and somebody intends to convert to Judaism, then the 7 Noahide laws are, of course, absolutely 100% something that somebody initially does with the intention to take on more. And the answer for a follower of Yeshua, which is what the actual question asked, as a follower of Yeshua, the answer is not really, because we can't get a bona fide conversion through a proper recognized ultra-Orthodox Beit Din. So it is simply just not an avenue that a person can pursue, despite Messianics going off and getting reform conversions or dodgy conversions with people whose legitimacy on the Beit Din as being actually Jewish is actually in question. That's wrong, and it's just a waste of your time and money, and you're only going to be punished for it, if not in this world, but in the world to come, or in both worlds. It is a grave sin, because the people on that panel and that Beit Din, they have to have fear of heaven, and in many cases, conversions are rejected not because of a person's faith in the Messiah, which is an automatic rejection. It makes the person eligible anyway, but because of the fact that the person may have ill intentions. Maybe they're just they're in love with a particular woman who's Jewish, and they couldn't care less about the Jewish faith, but they're just converting out of convenience because they like the look of the lady that they're with, or they've got mental issues or something of that nature, or something else makes them not eligible for conversion. So you can be denied conversion for many reasons, not just the fact that you are a follower of Yeshua, but the fact that you are a follower of Yeshua and you don't intend to change that status quo means that is not a route that you can go down. So therefore, no, you cannot progress and take on more commandments. But having said that, and I know that's something that you probably don't want to hear, but having said that, there's a little bit of good news. If you, in your former lifestyle, you had actually taken on the custom to wear tzitzit, maybe to wear kippah, you've put mezuzot up in the home, you've begun the custom of even tying tefillin, wearing prayer phylacteries and things like that, and this has become a particular custom and a tradition to you, despite the fact that the motive previously was because you thought it was a commandment, then these are things that can still remain in their observance for you, because this is become a tradition or a kind of like an oath that you have put upon yourself, provided that you haven't put observances on yourself that are beyond your capacity to actually do. And this is what I find a lot of Messianics do. They kind of end up getting much out of their depth. And over the course of a few years, they're very disappointed when you get them quietly and you speak to them on the side. You find that they're actually pretty disappointed with their level of observance, with what their expectations were initially, because it's actually very difficult to observe Torah unless you are actually living and have access to an Orthodox Jewish community. Aside from eating kosher, there's things like family purity laws, and having a mikvah, having a regular immersion in a body of living water, and so on and so forth. There's heaps of other things that a person has to take into account. Excuse me. So the answer is no. But if you've already taken on certain customs before you came into the knowledge of really who you are, and that is somebody who is a Noahide, then you can retain these customs. But of course, perhaps speak with a mentor or somebody that knows you, or if you have avenues of discussion available to you through someone from the Orthodox Jewish world, then of course consult with them, because the answer is always depends. The answer is never yes or no necessarily, because it depends on a myriad of situations. Okay, so I hope I've answered that question as clearly as possible. But I also wanted to, in answering it, I also wanted to add a few additional things about the 7 Noahide laws. The 7 Noahide laws being refraining from committing blasphemy, blaspheming the name of Hashem, refraining from worshipping idols, refraining from committing sexual immorality, and robbery, to not commit an act of theft, and to avoid any cruelty to animals, which is do not eat the limb of a living animal. And then number 7, establish courts of law. Initially, these commandments are found in Genesis 9:1 through 17. Though the majority of the commandments were actually given to Adam, though it is not explicitly stated, not until we get up to Genesis 9:1. We have 2 of them stated, which I talked about in the last video that I put up on it. And we have some of them are also in the 10 Commandments themselves. They pop up in the 10 Commandments. But one of the things I wanted to add, also too, you have some additional, more general commands found in the book of Jasher. In Jasher chapter 7, verse 20 through 25, you have an additional concept of refraining from iniquity, maintaining family purity, maintaining purity or cleanliness, and respecting parents. You also find in the book of Jasher in chapter 7. Now, so you think, well, hang on, that's another 3 Noahide laws. I thought there was 7, and those seem different to the ones you've rattled off in the 7. And that's correct. The answer is that the 7 Noahide laws aren't really actually singular laws in of themselves, but they are rather 7 categories of laws. And they actually are anywhere between 30 Noahide laws, and some say even 60 Noahide laws that can be subdivided from those 7. And it depends really where you look. And ultimately, the more you look into the concept of the 7 Noahide laws, you see that the 7 Noahide laws are almost infinite, in that really they pertain to anything to do with any type of moral decency. And so for somebody to say that I just keep the 7 Noahide laws, it's a very simplistic way of saying it, and I guess it's okay. But ultimately, that's not just the only thing that is incumbent upon you. You are actually expected to obey the 7 categories of Noahide laws, because they're categories, and to obey all the other rational laws that you find elsewhere in the Torah. For example, you shall respect your parents, which is one of the 10 commandments, not necessarily something that you find in the 7 Noahide laws, but obviously this is something that has to be observed as well. So it's really quite a larger concept for a person to get their head around, and I think this is where some people kind of think a bit less of somebody if they're a Noahide, rather than if they're kind of just punching the air saying, yeah, I'm a messianic, I'm doing all the commandments that are applicable to a male in the kingdom of Israel. And in actual fact, when you compare them to an Orthodox Jew, they're really not doing anything at all. And it's quite hilarious. If it wasn't so sad, it'd be really funny. Okay, so there's these 7 categories give rise to a minimum of at least 30 commands of the 7 Noahide laws, as I said. And they're principally found in Talmud Bavli, Kulin 92a. And that goes through and describes some more of the laws in detail. Do not draw up marriage contracts for homosexuals. Do not sell people. Do not get involved in human trafficking. Maimonides also speaks of 30 Noahide laws. In fact, Rabbi Shmuel ben Hofni Gaon, he speaks of a series of 30 Noahide laws that differ to another rabbi, Rabbi Menachem Azariah de Fano, whereas his 30 Noahide laws vary slightly from Rabbi Shmuel ben Hofni Gaon. So some of them include laws such as refraining from stick divination, being fruitful and multiplying, which we're familiar with in the book of Genesis, one of the laws originally given to the Adamic pair. And then we have the injunction forbidding necromancy, consulting oracles. And also there's one of the commands is not to observe the Sabbath, because you've got to remember, when we observe the Sabbath, we try to observe the Sabbath like an Orthodox Jew, and we haven't gone through a proper kosher conversion, then we run the risk of stealing the Sabbath from the Jews, which was originally given to them at Mount Sinai, or come under the charge of starting a new religion. So you have to be very careful. So if you want to observe the Sabbath in some capacity, and you want to feel that you're connected to Kadesh Baruch Hu, then you can keep it to a point. But there is at a certain point you've got to do something that obviously an Orthodox Jew would not do on that day, to cover yourself. So out of respect, because it's definitely kosher for a Noahide to read through the weekly Parshot every year, and be familiar with the Kadesh Baruch Hu and how he relates with mankind through the Torah and through the TaNaK. And so in doing that, a person becomes familiar with how the Almighty views Sabbath, and how it's a gift uniquely given to his people to set them apart from mankind, the priestly class of mankind. And so, of course, there's going to be a natural desire for somebody who is a Noahide to want to still have some sort of, do something to show the Creator that they have respect for the Shabbat. And so with that in mind, it's absolutely okay for them to maybe light candles and do various things. But again, they've got to make sure that they put some sort of distinctions there to show that they're distinct from the Orthodox Jew who observes it in a particular way. Because you're simply doing it out of respect. And if you live near a Jewish community anyway, particularly in Israel and some really Orthodox Jewish quarters, then if you are a Gentile living among them, a righteous Gentile, they're still going to expect you not to go out and drive on the Shabbat. So even though you might be able to drive on the Shabbat, ignite a combustion engine and drive around, why would you go out of your way to do so when you're familiar with the laws of the Torah by reading through the weekly Torah portions? You just pretty much do a fair bit of the Sabbath anyway, out of respect for the nation of Israel, and out of an acknowledgement that you serve the same God as the Hebrews. So that's why one of the commandments there, or one of the 30 laws of the 7 Noahide laws there, and there's variations between those two rabbis, speaks about one of them being not to actually observe the Sabbath. Which straight away throws up alarm bells and red flags with a Messianic who's, particularly if they've been observant for quite a few years. But it's this is the issue, one of the main issues in the Messianic movement, why people just seem to can't maintain and get traction with being in that walk, is because they're trying to walk like they're Orthodox within their capacity, and so all the while ignoring the Orthodox world and thinking, well, those guys just are off their heads, and we're the ones doing it right. And in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. Again, before I go any further, our source for a person being a Noahide who is somebody who perhaps embraces Yeshua is found in Acts 15, verse 28 through 29. For it seems good to the Ruach HaKodesh, that is the Holy Spirit, and us, to lay on you no greater burden than these requirements, that you abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, from from strangled animals and sexual immorality, you will do well. So this is a statement made by Yeshua's half-brother, James the Just, Yaakov HaZadek, and he made a public declaration after there was an issue in Antioch over some Pharisees from James the Just's congregation in Jerusalem going over there of their own accord and teaching that there are one of the means of salvation that one must acquire is circumcision of the flesh. Without being circumcised in the flesh, that you will have no salvation, which isn't necessarily correct, but nonetheless these were men from James's congregation, and there was division within the Netzrim in group in Antioch, and it caused Barnabas and Shaul to go to Jerusalem to have the matter actually sorted out before the actual the head of the Netzrim movement there, when it was still there in Jerusalem. And this gave birth to a document called in Latin the Didache or Didache, which is the 12 teachings, or the teachings of the 12. And so it was a document that was to accompany the early Netzarim frontiersmen, shluchim, the sent ones, and it was each of them were given a document with a seal from the Netzarim sect in Jerusalem, the council there, and that would legitimize them when they would go into Netzarim communities when they were on their journeys. And this would sort of settle this. This had all basic guidelines of how communities are to be set up and where the emphasis should be. And so this is where that statement comes from, that document, to a greater or lesser extent. Because as you read the text, you can get the sense that this is actually a quotation from a larger document when you're reading through Acts 15 anyway. I think I've covered a few things now, which I'm pretty happy with now. It's up online. I also wanted to talk about, I think I mentioned it, to putting a mezuzot up and tying tefillin. Now, you will get rabbis out there that say you're forbidden to put mezuzot up. You shouldn't even be able to purchase mezuzot if you're a Noahide. But the answer really is it depends on quite a few situations. Same with tefillin. You'll get them say, well, you can't buy or use tefillin in during the process of conversion. Because, what are you going to look forward to when you finally convert if you're already doing a lot of that stuff? It's sort of almost like having sexual relations between a couple before they get married. But the answer is that if it's already been your custom to tie tefillin, it's okay for you to continue that in your particular case. We know that one of the equivalent levels of observance of a Noahide in many respects is an Orthodox Jewish woman. They have roughly about the same amount of responsibilities in terms of reading Psalms and maybe praying once a day at the very least if you are a Noahide, even though that's not one of the Noahide laws specifically. But there's, like I said, there's an infinite amount of Noahide laws really, and there's enough there to keep you busy for a very long time. And so with that in mind, the actual observance of being a Noahide, being on the level of an Orthodox Jewish female, we know according to history that Rashi's daughters actually did tie tefillin. So we have a precedent there from one of the great sages, or the great sage, arguably the greatest sage. At least in terms of his commentaries and things like that, and how they're relied upon and looked upon in the Jewish world. Also, too, it is absolutely permitted to read the Talmud if you're a Noahide. If you have the intention of reading it to learn more about the 7 Noahide laws. In fact, actually in the Talmud, though I've yet to come across it because I'm reading the Talmud now, going through, there is a quotation where a Noahide is given the status of being on the level of the Kohen HaGadol, the High Priest of Israel, in terms of his righteousness, if he is pursuing Talmud study with the intention of being more obedient as a Noahide. So it's very serious lifestyle to be a Noahide. It's not something that should be flippant about, but it definitely is something that comes upon a person, and it will give you an immense amount of freedom, immense amount of pressure and weight lifted off your shoulders, particularly if you're a Messianic that's come in and you're trying to read through the Torah and observe as much of the 613 laws that are applicable to you. It's just overwhelming, and it's impossible. It's actually absolutely impossible to do it unless you have the support of a Torah obedient community around you. You can't do it in isolated places on your own. You need it needs to be done as a group. You can't you can't observe it just you and your wife, or maybe just you and a couple of friends somewhere in the middle of nowhere. There's certain things that you require. You will require. What else? Okay, yeah. So I hope I've been clear with my answer to the question that was in the comments on the last video. And it comes from a good place. People just want to be. They want the whole lot. They want to do everything. They don't necessarily want to hear that, oh, okay, so I really should be only doing 7 laws now. Like I said, it's not only 7 laws, it's 30, it's 60, it's infinite, and it's going to keep you busy. And really nothing much has to change from your walk as it has been already. If you've been attending a congregation every Sabbath and driving there, and the people that are running that, and the majority of the people there, they won't actually agree with your understandings from this video, then it would definitely be questionable whether you should continue to go there. Just stay at home. But if you're meeting maybe regularly with a group of people that are really serious about being obedient to the 7 universal moral laws, and or categories of laws, then obviously that would be a different story. That would be something that you should definitely look at expanding upon it and being a part of, because you don't want to be caught up in the roundup of the family of Christianity even in its farthest fringes of the Hebrew roots movement, because it'll be a situation or a scenario like Korah's family ultimately, and the earth will literally open up and swallow all of the adherents to that false religious system, because the sins over the years of that system have been piling up to the heavenlies. And there's a stench, and there's screams, and the blood of the innocents that have been crying out, multiplying from the ground. Even though Christianity today is very sort of warm and fuzzy and all full of love and gives you a hug and everything like that, this is only something that we have seen in the past 100 years or so. Not even that. Christianity wasn't always sort of warm and fuzzy and welcoming like it is today. There are quite a few things over the years that it has been responsible for that justice needs to be done. Crusades, pogroms, inquisitions, and anybody who studies them just can see the absolute inhumanity that this can manifest into, and can happen again. It can absolutely happen again. Everything can turn on the head of a pen, as they say. I hope this has been a informative video for you. A little bit more on the 7 Noahide laws. Remember, the 7 Noahide laws are categories, as are the 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are simply 10 categories. Each of the 10 commandments aren't singular laws. In fact, the Jews debate that there's only 9 commandments, because if you look at the first commandment, it actually says, I am Hashem, your Elohim, who rescued you or brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. Where's the command? There's no command. That's just a statement. So some of the Jews will commentate that there's only 9 commandments, and some say there's more than 20, because if you look at some of the latter commandments in the 10 commandments, there are multiple commands within the one command, within each command of the 10 commandments. So that's interesting as well. But this is because even the 10 commandments themselves are categories of particular types of laws. I'll give you an example with the 7 Noahide laws. The one to refrain from murder is also applicable for one to be obedient to refrain from murdering a person's reputation by speaking Lashon Hara, by speaking Motzi Shemra or Rikilut. So obviously, under this category of observance, that is to refrain from murder, one has to avail themselves to become familiar with the laws of Shemirat HaLashon, that is the laws of clean speech. So this is definitely something that's very much on the table for a Noahide to learn anything and everything to do with refraining from Lashon Hara. And this also goes for any particular Jewish work written focusing on Musar, that is the refinement of a person's character, and their midot, they're refining their ethical behavior, and so on and so forth. All of these works are absolutely encouraged for a Noahide to become abreast of and to learn, and to really improve and rectify and repair their attitude, because largely that's why the majority of us are put here on an individual basis, is because we've got some traits that are flawed, that we have to actually rectify to the best of our ability before we commit our bodies back to the earth. We move off from this mortal coil eventually. That's our mission, is to rectify our particular flaws. So we need to sit up with a mirror in front of us. I have to go, okay, what's my particular area where I fall down? That's where I need to work on myself, and that's largely what my mission here is on earth. And that's what a lot of religious groups don't sort of tell people. So, people are kind of sort of still wandering around in the dark after decades of being observant to a particular religion. Sorry about my voice; it's still not 100%. But thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give us some feedback. Make a comment or two if you like. Ask a question. Please be nice as usual. You don't have to be rude. And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.